Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session on Medicare expertise. My name usually is Chelsea Smith, Learning and Development Specialist here at Action Benefits, but today we had our Employee Appreciation Breakfast. So if you would like to refer to me as Lady Sophia of the Shire, you are more than welcome to do so just for today, because we had a like royalty themed breakfast and everyone had to Mad Libs a name. So I was Lady Sophia of the Shire. Love that for myself as a Lord of the Rings fan. Really great breakfast. I just want to give a quick shout out to HR. They did a great job mitigate or creating that breakfast for us. Awesome. Thank you, Megan, Mardell, and Stacy, if you're out there listening. And got to talk to Carl today, got to see him. Great, always a great time to spend some time with Carl. And joining me today is my friend Debbie Brown. You know her, you love her, probably here to see her. So let's give a round of applause to her. And if you'd like to say something to the audience, maybe tell them what your name was at the breakfast today, and we can get started in a moment.
Good morning, everybody. As you all know, I'm Debbie Brown, and today my official name is Queen Abigail of Coronation Street. So I am the Queen today. So, as they say, a lot of you I see on the panel that know me call me the Queen of Medicare. So, how appropriate that to be today. So, welcome, and Chelsea, take it away.
Our outcomes and our goals for today is to essentially tell you guys how and when someone can enroll in Medicare, how and when a beneficiary may pay enrollment penalties, and how and when exterior programs interact with Medicare. So let's get right into it, the Medicare enrollment portion of our show. So let's start with looking at how someone could enroll in Medicare and when they can enroll in Medicare. We'll talk about all of them, but I'm going to put them all just on the screen for now. So we'll start over here all the way on the left-hand side with the initial enrollment period, which is usually when beneficiaries are going to choose to start their journey with their Medicare coverage. Not always. You'll get to hear me say many times throughout our presentation today that it might not always be, it's never always with Medicare. It's always usually. So usually, oftentimes, someone starts their Medicare journey in the initial enrollment period. This period refers to the 3 months of time before and after a beneficiary turns 65, with their month of their birthday also counting towards that time, totaling a 7-month period of time. So 3 months before, 3 months after the person's 65th birthday. And during this period, the beneficiary can enroll in parts A and B. And then once they're in parts A and B, then they can start looking into getting themselves some C and D coverage as well. We're going to talk about the rest of these periods, like I said, but we're going to start with the initial one. We'll start at the beginning. In some instances, an IEP won't be needed even in the first place because beneficiaries sometimes are automatically enrolled in Medicare due to meeting some specific requirements. The requirements are on the slide in front of you, and these requirements generally are boiled down to the person being able to receive some sort of Social Security benefit in one way or another. Whether that be because they worked on the railroad, or because they have a disability, or because they have amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. I always love showing off that I can say that right the first time every time, but most of us know it as ALS. Those will automatically sign them up for Medicare. If you are collecting Social Security prior to turning age 65, you automatically are enrolled in Medicare at that point. That package of materials is mailed out 3 months prior to the person's 65th birthday, which means that the beneficiary would be getting Social Security due to ALS or a disability for at least 4 months prior to turning 65 in order to be automatically enrolled. So those are the reasons that you would be automatically enrolled in Medicare and not need the IEP in the first place. But that's not most of us, right? Most of us will have to enroll ourselves in Medicare. So many beneficiaries aren't enrolled in it automatically and must actively take steps to enroll by contacting Social Security offices 3 months before turning 65, or we usually recommend 3 months before turning 65, but anytime really during that special enrollment period, which we know is 7 months around surrounding and including their 65th birthday. If you are diagnosed with ESRD, that is the only other time that an initial enrollment period is not including that person turning 65, unless they unfortunately get diagnosed at when they turn 65. But that IEP, if it is triggered by ESRD or end-stage renal disease, that is a 3-month period after the diagnoses. So ESRD is 3 months, turning 65, technically 7 months. Okay. So already have a knowledge check for you. I'm going to throw that up on the screen for you. In which of the following cases will a beneficiary need to take action to enroll in Medicare Part A and B? Please let me know all those that apply.
Pushing the fact that a lot of people think that everybody gets Medicare due because they turn 65. And any day nowadays, people are continuing to work. So nobody's collecting their Social Security benefits. So they do not automatically get it. The only time that you would have to apply for Medicare Part A and B is if you have a group under 20 or you don't have any and you're on under 65. If your group's over 20, you don't have to even apply for Part A and of course for Part B. So just want to kind of stress that because everybody thinks, oh, they automatically get it. And then it's a couple months after they're 65 or the month of, and they have nothing in the mail. So just wanted to point that out.
That's a good one to point out. I feel like it's not often that people realize that that under 20 or over 20 thing is even a thing. I know I didn't know that until I started working here. So good thing to point out that, yeah, we'll get to that later on. But if you are working in a place with under 20 employees, it's probably a good idea to sign up for Medicare, for sure. Okay, so I'm going to end this poll now. If you answered B, you answered correctly. C is also an option. If you are diagnosed with ESRD at any age, then you have 3 months to sign up after that diagnosis. Usually the answer is B. They're both correct, B and C. I was throwing you guys for a loop early on. Let's keep on with the general enrollment period, the second way that someone could interact with Medicare. So every year, the general enrollment period takes place from January 1st till March 31st. This is the time during which people who are eligible for Medicare Parts A and B and didn't sign up when they were first eligible to can sign up. At this point, Medicare Advantage plans are off the table. You could not sign up for Part C at this point, but you can sign up for A and B. Coverage will start for the beneficiary the first of the month after the beneficiary enrolls. So if you enroll January 1st, you're going to get that Medicare coverage starting on February 1st. Keep in mind, the rule used to be that they would start getting that coverage in July. No more. They get the coverage the month after they enrolled, just like if they would have enrolled during their initial enrollment period. So for those of us who are more visual learners, this is kind of what the timeline would look like. If you don't enroll during your initial enrollment period, you would wait for the next GEP, sign up for Parts A and B, like we said, January, which is, like we said, January 1st through March 31st. Oftentimes, the enrollee would have to pay a late enrollment penalty. We'll get into those in the later portion of our show. And then Medicare coverage will be effective that first month after enrollment. They sign up in February, they're going to get that coverage starting in March. They sign up in March, going to get that coverage starting in April. Pretty easy, easier than it used to be. It used to be July, now it is the first of the month after, similar to other enrollment periods. So next we have the special enrollment period, which is probably the second most popular time that someone might sign up or start their interaction with Medicare. This would be in effect if someone loses access to their employer-based coverage for whatever reason, and they were over 65, this is the time that they would interact with Medicare and sign up, or ESRD or any of those other options, I guess, in theory. But usually this is someone either moving or losing access to their employer group coverage would trigger a special enrollment period. And this period lasts for 8 months after the person is terminated from that coverage. So once that initial enrollment period ends, beneficiaries may have a chance to sign up for Medicare during a special enrollment period. These are triggered if that, like we said, if a group health plan is available to that person during their employment, then they would use this period to then sign up for Medicare after. The spouse and the employee would gain a special enrollment period at this point. And you only get it if you are covered by a group health plan. Usually, if you are using a special enrollment period to enroll in Medicare, you are not then penalized with any late enrollment penalties. Notice I said usually, but usually that is the case. You are waived the late enrollment penalties if you are signing up during that special enrollment period because you were covered under that group health plan. SEPs can be used also in tangent with a retiree benefit and within the last 8 months of the loss of the coverage. So while Part B does have the longest time period that someone can enroll in, it is important to recognize that beneficiaries might still want to think in terms of 63 days when signing up for Part B because they might be interested in also signing up for D and C. If that's not a problem for them or if they're not interested in those things, then they have all of 8 months to sign up for Part B. But just because they have that extended amount of time to sign up for Part B doesn't mean that that also extends to D and C. Obviously, get coverage where you can if you need it. You know, if they need it in that 11th hour at that 8th month period, always sign up if they need it. But if D and C are of interest to your client or to that consumer, probably a good idea to think of Part B in that 63-day window as well. So overall, 8 months for Part B, 63 days for D and C.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base on, so this has become kind of a more cumbersome problem lately. So when your group is over 20, your Medicare that's full-time and part-time, 20 employees, everybody gets stuck on that 8 months. Keep in mind that when you're on Medicare and you're on Cobra, Medicare is primary. So Cobra is secondary. So keep in mind, you have A, but you don't have B. So if you don't have B and you're on Cobra, you will not have covered benefits for medical. So even though they give you 8 months, it's best to go on to Medicare A and B as soon as you go on Cobra so that you don't have any claim issues. The carrier may cover the claim, everything may go through, but down the road, you could get a Medicare demand letter. And lately, we've had a couple cases where they're getting $50,000 and $60,000 bills because the person did not take B. So very, very important. Yes, you have 8 months, but I wouldn't wait that time. So that's really important to know. So that's one of the things that I stress to agents. Get that Part B as soon as they lose that coverage.
Cobra is not active coverage. Always keep that in mind. It's not going to protect you from those late enrollment penalties either. We're going to get into all this in a minute, but I always just Cobra with the late enrollment stuff, don't fall for it. Make sure that you have that in mind when you are giving advice to clients or signing for Cobra yourself. Okay, so which of the following statements is true regarding general enrollment period? Okay, so if you answered B, the period is designed for beneficiaries who may have missed their initial enrollment period, you answered correctly. Awesome, thank you for that. If you talked about how they're eligible to enroll at any time throughout the calendar year, no, unfortunately they do not. That's not the case for general enrollment period. And the period lasting 8 months from the end of employer sponsored coverage, you're thinking of special enrollment period. So you're right, you had remembered some of the things I had said, just you applied it to the wrong enrollment period.
Hey, Chelsea, can I also add to that, because we get a lot of this, and I meant to add it to my last one, but
Go for it.
keep in mind that when you're on Cobra and you do the 18 months or whatever amount of months you're on there, that is not a qualifying event to enroll into Medicare A and B. So if you did not enroll, you went past 8 months, you didn't enroll in A and B, losing Cobra or exhausting Cobra is not a QLE. So here it is, August. You've used the 18 months of Cobra. You now have nothing. You are not going to get Medicare A and definitely not B. So you're going to have to wait for general enrollment. You can go apply, but what they're going to do is they're going to give you Part A because that's free, and Part B will be effective the following February 1st.
Yep.
So just
And you're
wanted
gonna
to
pay this.
emphasize, and you're gonna, so if you're without Part B for 12 months, you're gonna be paying 10%, and each year it goes up.
That's what I was
So,
gonna say. Yep, you're gonna end
yep,
up paying those late enrollment
yep,
penalties too. So always,
yes.
it always just seems to work out better for the beneficiary to usually err on the side of just
Mm-hmm.
going for it, just getting Part B in the
Yep,
first place. Almost always.
perfect.
Okay. See, Deb and I are stealing stealing words out of each other's mouths here. Okay, cool.
Great
But
minds
yes,
think alike.
next we have the annual enrollment period. And I promised those of us yesterday, sorry about that we were going to talk about this period here today. So this period is for those who would like to change some aspects of their enrollment or are already enrolled in parts A and B and would like to add C and D. So you have to have parts A and B in the first place to participate in an annual enrollment period. And this is where you could enroll in or change C and D plans. This goes on from October 15th to December 7th. So I'll read this to you really quick, but these are all of the ways that someone could use an annual enrollment period. I guess I won't read them all to you. It's kind of a lot of them. You can read them all. Generally, overarchingly, you already have A and B. You're either changing from one type of plan to another type of plan, the lights go off in here. Sorry about that. They drop the Medicare prescription drug programs completely, or you can switch from one plan that either does or does not offer coverage to one that does or does not offer coverage, doesn't matter. Again, this is from October 15th through December 7th. And any changes that the beneficiary puts into place during this time will take effect on January 1. I always tell my agents that this is a great time to kind of check in with your clients who you already have and make sure that they are comfortable with the coverage they have. I would not start off with a hard sell to them. You can't do that, but check in with them, see how they're doing with the coverage that they have, and use that to start a conversation to maybe see if there's any other options that work for them. All right, and then finally we have the Medicare Advantage open enrollment period. This coincides with the general enrollment period as it goes from January 1st to March 31st. And this is where someone can make a one-time change to their Medicare Advantage plan. So you're only allowed to make this change one time during the period, and changes will take effect the first of the month after the plan gets your request. So there's basically three things you can do during this time period. You can either disenroll from a MA or MAPD plan and enroll in a different one. You can go back to vanilla Medicare with or without Part D or prescription drug plan. You can enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan and change to another Medicare Advantage plan with or without drug coverage within the first 3 months of having Medicare. So a couple of different things you can do during that time period. Basically, we kind of think of it as like a switch, right? A like plan change, or one switch from a kind of a similar plan to another, but the drug coverage does not matter. You can go to a plan with drug coverage, or leave a plan with drug coverage to go to one that doesn't have drug coverage, or back and forth, right? That doesn't change whether or not you can do those things. Medicare with ESRD. This might not be something that affects all or maybe even most Medicare recipients, but it is important to keep this in mind as an agent, because you probably will run into this at some point in your career. I like to just have everything on the screen. Okay. So for individuals who are eligible for Medicare, because they have ESRD, there are some special enrollment and coordination details that you should be aware of, right? So I always like to think of these things as an example situation. So let's just follow someone's journey through their enrollment and coverage when they are diagnosed with ESRD. So once they're diagnosed, they have a 3-month waiting period for Medicare benefits to kick in. They might begin immediately if a doctor gives a note that that's necessary, but often it takes 1 to 3 months for that treatment to begin. The two conditions where it could be put in immediately is if that person participates in a home dialysis training program offered by a Medicare approved training facility during that first 3 months of time, or if the doctor expects training to be finished and ability to do self-administered dialysis treatments at home is going to be an option. So those are the two situations, that a person might get that Medicare coverage early, but normally it takes that 1 to 3 months. During that first 3 months of treatment, a beneficiary's employer group health plan will continue providing medical coverage. The employer group health plan is responsible for coverage until the first day of month 4 when Medicare benefits start working. On that first day of month 4, a 30-month coordination period will begin. And during that time, the employer group health plan will continue paying benefits as the primary payer. And Medicare may pay for any remaining costs as a secondary payer. An individual will lose Medicare eligibility 12 months after the last dialysis treatment occurs, or 36 months after receiving a kidney transplant. A lot of numbers here to remember. But coverage can also be extended when the person has ESRD if they continue to resume dialysis treatments or they eventually end up receiving a transplant. It can be extended again after another transplant. Either option can result in an extension, regardless of both happen or neither happen. I'm sorry, regardless of either one happens, I should say. So if they continue dialysis after that 12 months, then yes, they get back on Medicare, and they would then continue to have another extension if they then also receive a kidney. So essentially, just think of it as like, at any point there's going to be action involved on the side of the provider to continue to give treatment to this person, Medicare will continue to give coverage to that person. And this isn't brand new. This was new last year, but I do like to emphasize it for maybe someone who hasn't come to one of our webinars in a while. This is fairly new information. Part B will now cover immunosuppressive drugs beyond the original 36 months, those extensions we talked about, under these two conditions. And that'd be previously offered after an organ transplant, or if the beneficiary has no other health coverage with an immunosuppressive benefit. There we go. So this is new, like we said. And if they want to take just that immunosuppressive benefit of Part B, they are welcome to do that. It will result in a reduced premium, but is still based on income and tax filing status. So it's still subject to like IRMA and penalties and all that. It only covers your immunosuppressive drugs and nothing else. It isn't a substitute for full health coverage, so it's not active coverage, similar to COBRA, like we talked about. And it is still IRMA eligible, like I just said. So it's kind of just a way to kind of tack on some extra coverage for someone who might need to continue to have need, or who has a continued need for, I should say, immunosuppressive drugs, but doesn't have access to any other way to get those immunosuppressive drugs. So kind of keeps our ESRD folks safe for a little longer. A client of yours is diagnosed with ESRD and has begun dialysis treatments. The client is not currently covered by an employer group health plan. Which of the following statements are true? Okay, so if you checked the first two options, you are completely correct. If you got one of the two, then awesome. You either were tricked because you're used to answering just one and picked that one and you were correct. or you got half the answer, which is good. It's a starting point, right? So there is a 3-month waiting period for Medicare benefits to begin after the beneficiary is diagnosed with ESRD. But that 3-month period can be waived if the doctor certifies that the patient is able to give themselves their own dialysis treatments at home. So I don't really know anything about ESRD, like on that level. I don't know what that would take to get that certification, but that is an option. Okay, so that concludes the first portion of our show. Let's head on to the middle portion of our show that concerns late enrollment penalties. Parts A, B, and D. So late enrollment penalties with Part A, they are a little formulated a little differently than the other two, but it is very rare that someone ends up actually paying a late enrollment penalty for Part A. So beneficiaries can be subject to late enrollment periods if they don't sign up for Medicare when they're first eligible. That's true for Parts A, B, and D, really. But for Part A, this penalty only applies if the person doesn't sign up during their IEP and doesn't qualify for that premium-free Part A, which, as we learned from yesterday in our Medicare Basics class, that is granted, premium-free Part A is granted to beneficiaries and their spouses or their spouses if they paid Medicare taxes long enough while working, and usually that amount of time ends up being about 10 years. So if you didn't work at all or didn't marry someone that worked at all for 10 years and didn't pay into those taxes, that is the only time that you would have to pay even the premium for Part A. And then the only time you would have to pay that late enrollment penalty then is then if you also didn't sign up during your IEP. So two different events had to occur for you to even need to worry about this late enrollment penalty, but I'm sure it does happen in some capacity, just not very often. The penalty does end up getting calculated by adding a 10% fee to the base premium each month, and that penalty is charged for double the amount of time that the beneficiary should have been enrolled in Part A, but was not enrolled in Part A. So if, for example, a beneficiary waited a full year to sign up for Part A and needed to pay the premium, they'd pay 10% more each month for Part A for 24 months. Don't quote me, I believe it is, the premium is $505, I think. Don't quote me, I believe it's $505. Anyway, so in 2020, I was right. Okay, so in 2024, the Part A premium for a person who has worked less than 30 quarters of Medicare covered employment was $505 a month. And those who have been there, who worked like a partial, there is also a partial premium. So if you worked 30 to 39 quarters, you can buy Part A at a reduced premium rate, which in 2024 is $278. So for this year in 2024, you would multiply either that 278 or 505 by 10%. And then they would be charged that for double the amount of years that they would need, or that they didn't have that coverage. So if it was 2 years, like it says on the screen here, the person we charge 10% more of 278 or 505 every 4 years. And this is recalculated each year. So Part A and Part B both have late enrollment penalties like we talked about before, but Part B penalties are calculated a little differently. So with some exceptions, when we're talking about Part A, that Part A late penalty is only applied if the person did not enroll when they initially could and were ineligible. It's at 10% and is in place for twice the number of years that that person should have enrolled but didn't. For Part B, it's a little different, right? With some exceptions, like we said, if that person had employer group health coverage, the Part B late penalty applies only if the person didn't enroll during their IEP. It is a 10% increase to the premium for each 12-month period the enrollment was delayed, and that penalty lasts for life. For the entire rest of the time that that person has Part B, that penalty will remain in place. Unlike Part A, where it eventually drops off. Part B, you're with it for life. It is a life sentence. So that's why Debbie Narrow is saying it's usually good to err on the side of enrolling in Part B than not. So let's take a look at a little example here for Medicare Part B late enrollment penalty. So let's say she had an initial enrollment period that ended in December. And let's say she waited until March of 2024 to sign up for Part B during her general enrollment period for whatever reason. Her coverage would then start April 1st. And her Part B penalty would be 20% of the standard premium and would be paid for as long as Opal keeps Part B. Notice back there too that she, even though there was technically a little bit over that 20%, that it was like 23, 24 months or something, it still rounds down to the fullest year. So that would only be 20%. So even though I think it was, yeah, like I said, 3 months, still gets that 20%. So late enrollment penalties. Now we already learned about Part A. We already learned about Part B. Part D is very similar. The late enrollment penalty to Part D is very similar to Part B. Part A is the only one that's a little wonky. It's Part D and B that the ones are usually you're probably going to have to work with the most as an agent anyway. But that's kind of how they work similarly. So for Part D, the late enrollment penalty applies if the beneficiary does not enroll in that Part D coverage when first eligible, or they have a gap in credible coverage that is longer than 63 days. This penalty is determined by multiplying 1% of the national base premium by the number of months that this person went uncovered, rounded to the nearest dime, and then added on to their monthly premium. We're doing a little bit of algebra here for a second, so sorry about that for those of us who struggled in math as much as I did when I was in school. So the penalty does stay in place as long as the beneficiary is enrolled, just like Part B. So this one is a little bit trickier because instead of every prescription drug plan premium is different, right? So instead of picking one number, or instead of trying to guess with each person, we just pick the national average and you use that to determine the person's late enrollment penalty. So as an example, let's take Tariq. You'll know him if you took any courses through Absorb. When they join the plan review Medicare systems to see if the person had any potential break in credible coverage for 63 days or more in a row. If they did have that break, Medicare drug plans will send the person a notice asking for information about that person's prior prescription drug coverage. And so if that person knows deep down that they had some sort of break in coverage that would be close to that 63 days, it's really important that they look for that notice in the mail and then complete it and turn it in. If they do that, then there's less of a chance that they're going to, if they can explain that gap, there's less of a chance that person would end up getting that penalty applied. But if they don't explain the gap at all, they're just going to charge you the late enrollment penalty. So make sure if you have a person who's signing up for Part D, make sure you tell them, hey, keep your eye out for any notices you might get if you had any lapses in coverage, and answer them if you do. That way you can potentially avoid that break in coverage. But let's go to our example Tariq here for a second. So Tariq is currently eligible for Medicare, and his initial enrollment period ended on May 31st of 2022. He doesn't have prescription drug coverage from any other source. He didn't join by May 31st, 2022, and instead joined during the open enrollment period that ended December 7th, 2023, making his drug coverage official as of January 1st, 2024. So that's our story with Tariq. So this is what would have happened with his drug coverage this year. So in 2024, Medicare would have recalculated Tariq's penalty using the 2023 base beneficiary premium, which at that point was $33.06. So that would make 31%, 1% for each of the 31 months that he was out of the $33.37, which was that national base beneficiary premium for that year, or 1034. And since this monthly penalty is always rounded to the nearest 10 cents, he paid 1030 additionally each month to his plan's monthly premium. So it's going to be difficult for everyone to know exactly what that person's premium is going to be each month based just on this calculation alone. Because remember, we are only calculating at this point the penalty. We are not calculating what that premium for that person will be, because every premium is going to be different depending on what plan this person selects. So this math on the screen here is just for his penalty, right? So 31% penalty times that base beneficiary premium for 2023 is $9.95. $9.95 rounded up is $10. $10 for 2024. So we can do that again. Here, it's recalculated every year based on what the national premium would be. And then again, added into that person's base premium for their drug coverage. So I did this one based on what they estimate it'll be for this year. So $34.50 times that 31% for that 31 months goes $10.70 rounded to the nearest dime is like $10.70. So that would be his penalty probably for 2025, because we don't know for sure until 2024 is over, but that would probably be his coverage for penalty for 2025. And again, added on to whatever he ends up paying for his drug coverage. Okay, so that is all of the late enrollment penalties. I just remember them like this. Part A is the one you're probably not going to deal with a lot, but it is 10% times the number of years the person went without it. For twice the number of years it was delayed. Part B is 10% increase for each full 12-month period. Person should have had coverage and didn't, and is for life. Part D, also for life, but we also have to throw in that base premium from Part D, the national base premium, and then add it on to whatever it is. Part B obviously added into as well, but that one's a little less hard to remember because you're already using that number in the first place to determine what that penalty is going to be.
Chelsea did a great job explaining it, but keep in mind there are Part B calculators and Part D as in dog calculators. If you Google Part B calculator for Part B LEP calculator, it'll come up, and it's real easy to use. You just put how many months that they've been without Part B, and it gives you what their penalty is. Same with Part D. As long as you know when they turned 65, if they didn't have drug coverage at age 65, you put in whenever it stopped and put in the calculator, and it gives you the exact amount of what their penalty will be. I use it all the time, so it's a great tool to have and use. So, yep. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Yes, I totally agree with you there. And then Christine, just to answer your question also, I'm seeing here that you're asking me, are you required to calculate any of this? Absolutely not. This is not on you. Medicare does all this math for you. I'm just kind of putting this out there as an FYI, right? So in case your client comes back to you later, you ask them, hey, did you not have any drug coverage at any point in their life? I'm like, oh. And then they come back at you a couple months later and like, oh my gosh, the premium is so much higher than you said it was. What are you doing? You can say, well, there was a penalty that is in place. I can walk you through kind of an idea of how that penalty came to be.
Yeah, and Chelsea, just to back you up on that, also just to let you guys know is if a member does get a penalty, say that they didn't turn in their declaration of prior prescription form in if they were requested for it, or let's just say they didn't have any drug coverage when they turned 65, that is going to show up on their premium from the carrier. So whether it's Humana or Priority Health or Blue Cross, you're going to see if they have a zero premium for their plan, you'll see and they get charged, $5 or $3.30 or whatever, that's going to be what their LEP is. So just to let you know, that will come through the carrier.
I had no idea. I did not know that. Wow, Debbie.
Yep.
See, every time I do this with you, I learn something new. I did not know that I already knew that.
CMS, their Medicare, is going to let the carrier know, hey, we're not seeing any prior prescription coverage. So that's why it's so important, just so important to make sure if your client age 67, 66, past the age of 65. They were on a group plan. It was a credible drug plan. It's so important that they fill out that declaration form, and have them send it to you and send it through us. If we're your GA, send it to us and let us follow through with it, because we will make sure it gets removed. If they send it to the carrier, 9 times out of 10, it gets lost. It doesn't get where it's supposed to be. And now they have the LEP. Now they have to go through, it used to be called Maximus. It's called something else now. I can't think of it right now. Now they have to go through that. That's a 60 to 90-day appeal that process. So they're going to have to keep paying that premium until that LEP gets removed. So very important. So be proactive with your clients. Tell them to look for the letter, have them contact you, and get it filled out correctly.
See, Deb, that's why I'm glad you're around. I always knew it was important to look out for that letter. I never knew that if they qualified for that in penalty, that the carriers knew. Okay, learn something new every day. See, good thing we have Debbie around, you know? Okay, we only have 9 minutes because as usual, I talk too much. So I'm going to just give you the answer to this question. The answer it says in most cases, the only late enrollment penalty that ends while the beneficiary is enrolled in Medicare is Part A. B and D, those are life sentences. Okay, supplemental plans. I'm going to go through these as concisely as I can. So when someone applies for a Medicare supplement policy, they are either applying within a guaranteed issue period or a non-guaranteed issue period. We talked about this yesterday if you were in the basics class. And what this means is that depending on which period the beneficiary applies will determine if the beneficiary has to undergo medical underwriting. And the prices might change if that person has to go through underwriting, or they might not be offered coverage at all. It might not be available to them if they have to go through underwriting. So it's, again, I always say it kind of like this: if a client has their heart set on a specific supplement plan, just make sure you get them signed up within that 6 months when they turn 65, right after they sign up for parts A and B, because that's when they're guaranteed issue. That's when the carrier cannot discriminate against them if they have a prior condition or charge them more for that prior condition. Outside of that 6 months, the carrier is welcome to add more charges to them if they have any prior conditions or answer those medical questions in a certain way, or they can just say, no, we're not covering you. So again, if your client, make sure that your client doesn't have their heart set on any specific med sup plan, if that's a route that you would like to take. So coexistence coordination, we're heading into the final leg of our show. This will tell you how different exterior types of coverage will interact with Medicare if that is something that your client might have something with. So what this means is a coordination of benefits, right? So coordination of benefits refers to how Medicare and another insurance carrier or another entity might interact with Medicare, like VA benefits or employer coverage, whatever. They're each called payors. When there's more than one payer, a coordination of benefits rule decides who pays first and then who cleans up, pays more. There might be that situation as well, or maybe VA pays for a portion and Medicare covers the rest, or maybe vice versa. There could also be third payers. It could get really crazy if you're feeling really feisty, but that's just basically what we're talking about here, whether or not Medicare pays first. And this can be important, especially if the person has group coverage, and that could really mess them up later on if this is not followed properly. So this chart here will depict the type of plan that a person might have and the different ways that it can coexist with Medicare. I will get these slides out to you sometime tomorrow, so you have no need to memorize this chart. But all of these that are on the screen can coexist with Medicare. Most of the time, Medicare is going to wind up being the primary payer. The only time is that you can't be on the marketplace if you have Medicare. If you have Medicare, your marketplace coverage ends and you cannot shop on the marketplace. That's just how it goes. And then also keep in mind, you'll see here that if someone is enrolled in an employer group health plan, and they have more than 20 employees, Medicare becomes a secondary payer. And the same is true for beneficiaries who are under 65 and disabled, but are still enrolled in an employer group health plan. That 20 group employees does come.
Actually, for people
Oh.
that are under 65, if your group is less than 100. So
It's 100 now?
So
Okay.
most people know that if your group is over 20, you're on Medicare, you don't need to get Medicare, right? You
Mhm.
turned 65. If your spouse or yourself goes on Medicare under age 65, you are going to be Medicare primary if that group is less than 100.
Okay.
So if you're under 65, you're on disability, that's you or your spouse, your group has to be over 100 if you want Medicare primary. So you're going to have to get A and B when your group is under 100, under 65. We have that question a lot. So just wanted to emphasize that.
Cool. All right, because we just have 5 minutes, I am just going to skip over this knowledge check for right this second and head into the veteran coverage portion of our show. So while some veterans might see the Part B premium as a burden, the VA does recommend that vets enroll in A and B when they turn 65. Depending on the vet situation, they might have the option to attend civilian hospitals and doctors, and they might do that if they are enrolled in Parts A and B. Some might not have the desire for that option, but others might. It's up to the vet themselves what they want to do. But we recommend that the vet at least gives themselves the option to go to a civilian hospital if they so chose. VA coverage does not protect vets from late enrollment penalties, though. So if they think that they might be interested in Part B at any point, you're noticing a theme here, at any point, if they think they might be interested in it down the road, just go get it. Right, just go sign up for it. It does not protect you from those late enrollment penalties. Yeah, I know I'm going kind of fast because we're about wrapping up our time here today, so no need to memorize these slides. I will get them out to you sometime tomorrow.
Hey,
And then,
Chelsea,
oh, go ahead.
just also, if you're on VA benefits or any kind of like TRICARE VA, I know you're going into TRICARE right now, but just to kind of help you up a little bit with this, if you're on TRICARE or VA benefits and you're on Medicare, you have to get B. You lose your coverage if you don't take it. So that's just put that in the back of your mind. This is a personal situation that I've got in my own family. So you will lose your benefits if you do not take Part B when you become age 65 and you don't have a group plan.
All right, cool. See, it's good to have someone who has that first-hand knowledge like that. I don't have a veteran in my family where I know that information, so good thing. Like once again, Debbie comes in clutch again. Okay, so TRICARE. For TRICARE, who pays first is affected by what services are covered by what entity. If the service is covered by both TRICARE and Medicare, Medicare pays first, then TRICARE. If the service is only covered by one entity, then that one is the one that pays, and the other one will take a break and not do anything. So if TRICARE covers something and Medicare doesn't, obviously TRICARE is going to pay. If Medicare covers it and TRICARE doesn't, Medicare is going to pay. If they both cover it, Medicare pays, then TRICARE. All right, we're going to skip this one knowledge check. Head into Medicare with COBRA. We kind of talked about a little bit of this already. I highly recommend checking out our webinars and videos on COBRA if you'd like to get more information about this. But if you're in this webinar, you probably already know what COBRA is, that extension of employer group health coverage for a certain amount of time. In general, this only applies to, as we know, employers with 20 or more employees. It's offered for 18 months and up to 36 months in some cases. And like we said before, if we're just going to focus on the Medicare portions for today, I have a little flow chart for you about how COBRA and Medicare interact. If you enroll in Medicare while on COBRA, you lose COBRA eligibility. If you enroll in Medicare prior to getting COBRA coverage, you can get COBRA. You can get it even if you're enrolled in just Part A. We do recommend, as we, common theme, We do recommend you sign up for Part B if you end up doing Cobra as well, just so that you don't end up with those late enrollment penalties. And keep in mind too, Part D may be avoided, or Part D late enrollment penalties, I should say, can be avoided if the Cobra coverage is considered credible. But keep in mind that Cobra is not active coverage and will not prevent you from getting late enrollment penalties for Part B. So a lot of just basically same advice with Cobra as we would give for any other situation. Sign up for Part B if you want it. But it can count as drug coverage for that credibility portion. Whew, okay, we're at that 11 o'clock mark. So these are just repeats of the slides that I already said, we already talked about. If you're gonna remember anything from today, remember all these enrollment periods. Remember how parts A, B, and D have separate types of late enrollment penalties that are a little different. Part B and D are similar, and part A is more different than part B and D. But part B and D are very similar. And then that coexistence chart, like I talked about earlier. Again, no need to memorize any of this stuff. I will give it to you at sometime tomorrow.
No, I just want to say thank you guys for attending. Thank you for being a part of Action Benefits.
Yes, seconding that. Again, thank you so much for spending time with us. You know where to find us if you need anything. And you guys all made me smile today calling me Lady Chelsea. Thank you so much. And enjoy the nice weather today.